Welcome to the Consulting Leaders Podcast, where we talk about the business of consulting. Whether you're looking to grow your practice or learn from the stories of leaders in consulting, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Guillaume Jouvencel, ex-PwC and co-founder of GHA Marketing. Join me as I interview the best consultants in their niche. Let's get on with the show. Paul, welcome to Consulting Leaders. Happy to have you.
Thank you, Guillaume. Thank you for having me today. I really appreciate it, and Happy New Year.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, at the very moment we're recording, it's still the 31st, but when this will air, that should be 2026. Cool. Let's jump straight into it. What pulled you into designing capital-ready companies and acquisition-ready companies, coming from an accounting and operating background, Paul?
The accounting and operating background, was early in my career, and I was with Coopers and Lybrand and Sheraton hotels around the world. I ended up turning around a hotel construction project that was gone awry out in Los Angeles. I ended up in the environmental engineering business, opening up a new practice inside of a geotechnical firm, and then I ended up running a staffing company. After those things, I was kind of bored, so I became a turnaround guy, and I got into the business of walking into companies that were really in deep trouble. And doing that multiple times, you start seeing things that you maybe weren't seeing in better run or well run organizations. And so, in those turnarounds, I saw a lot of tragedy. Um, you know, where owners had struggled for generations, and then something went wrong, and they didn't have any value, right? When they wanted to, and then even working in operating when I started coaching companies with scalable companies with decent margins, and they were coming to the point in their life when they wanted to transition. They weren't getting offers. They weren't getting attracted. The business was not attractive, or primarily because it wasn't ready, right? And what I realized and what I learned was that business need to be intentionally designed to transfer, because value is only value if someone else is willing to pay for it, right? And a lot of business owners have their heads down running their companies, and they're really focused on net operating income and EBITDA, and they're not focused on valuation. And only 20% of a company's value is the EBITDA. 80% of the value is the multiplier. And they, as operating leaders, aren't even really thinking about the multiplier for most of their life until they get into the private capital situation and find out that they really don't have an attractive company. They really don't have transferable value. So that's what caused me to, through my coaching career over the last 15 years, caused me to actually focus on what I call capital ready enterprise design. By definition, it means the enterprise has been designed to either receive capital or to transfer, to sell to a private equity firm or to a strategic buyer.
Mm-hmm. So the question I usually ask here is, what problem do you solve? But I think you've already alluded to that, right? You're gonna basically help companies, and I'm interested into understanding what type of companies. You're gonna get them ready from where they are right now, probably not ready or not fully ready, to be either acquired or get a capital injection, whether that be private or public. Is that the problem that you're solving?
Well, it is, but it goes a little deeper than that, Guillaume. It's really, the problem is in the owner's mindset. Their lack of education or awareness about the fact that the value of their business is locked up in their company, because it's really about them. The problem is the owner. Is they don't realize that when they build a business around themselves and everything's dependent upon them, and everything's locked in their head, and they have all the customer relationships and the supply chain relationships, they don't have any transferable value. The risk is too great, because that person, that owner, wants to leave. So when they leave, everything goes out the door. So the problem is really a much bigger problem than most people think. It's an emotional problem. It's an understanding that value isn't created by you being the rock star. Value is created when the company, when that was the old saying, you need to become less for the company to become more, right? And that's the problem that is hard to first get their attention around that. When they're looking at their bottom line and they're making enough money, they, as Rob Slee would say, they really have created themselves a job. So the problem solving is a mindset change from, hey, I got this great job, I can pay for everything, to I have a valuable asset here that other people want to acquire.
Yeah. Why would you want that? Like, isn't it just fine to have a business that you know is at the end of the day a high-paying job? I love this expression, but like, is that the goal ultimately, in your opinion?
It's an interesting question. Some people are happy with that.
Mhm.
There's been a lot of surveys around this, but if they've, so there are different answers to that question. So I have a client right now, for example, I've been working with, and what they've done, what we helped them do was pull the excess capital on an annual basis out of the business and create wealth that way. And so they created their own portfolio and of wealth in their real estate portfolio, and the company has continued to grow in the meantime. So they would pay their taxes, they'd keep enough working capital in there for the company to grow and scale, and anything over and above that, I had them put into a wealth portfolio, and now they're independently wealthy, and they still have the company.
Mhm.
So if you do things smart, the whole idea, one of my brand promises, Guillaume, is to create freedom for ownership, right? And
Mm.
so freedom means that if the company were to go bankrupt, if there was a disaster, they are still set up in life where they can live without their business. And so, but what happens is most business owners, again, it's their job, they're focused. They haven't done the work I just talked about with a wealth manager and creating a portfolio such that they're independently wealthy.
Yeah.
It's interesting. 50% of business transactions come through either death, disease, divorce, disability. There we call them the 5 Ds, and you're not even ready sometimes, but you haven't built that wealth, so you're not financially independent. So they should get something back, in my mind, from 15 to 20 years worth of effort, and I can show them how to make millions of dollars if they just do it right. So,
Yeah.
I think they've earned the right, and really it's an education issue. Being unaware.
Hmm. So, who is it that you are helping specifically with that then? Because I guess it's going to depend heavily on company size, industry, or is it like completely agnostic? Who is it that you get the best results for?
Yeah, my core customer, if you want to call it, I'm industry agnostic. So when I was when I matriculated through my career, I really didn't know what I wanted to do, and I really wasn't a fan of either one industry or the other. So I jumped around on job types, and I jumped around on industry. So I'm relatively industry agnostic. What I really care about is the entrepreneur. I just have fallen in love with people who go out and start businesses and take that risk and create something and make something happen.
Mhm.
I grew up playing hockey, and then I ended up coaching, and I realized I have a coaching profile. And so my number one criteria for core customer is an owner who has a business that wants to scale, and that owner needs to be coachable. They have to be open to taking advice and learning and growing. And with that type of uh, core customer, I can help them really grow their business, and I can help them create enormous wealth, and I can help them create freedom from their business. Now, let me just stop there and say one thing: is that studies show that at least 1/3 of business owners, particularly the baby boomer generation, want to die with their
Hmm.
boots on, right? So they don't they're so tied to their company they can't see life without it, which is another problem that I solve, is because they haven't defined significance in their life after the door hits them in the backside. And so,
Yeah.
if the number one reason why 70% of businesses don't transfer is because they haven't created a personal plan that answers the purpose question, right? Who am I after the business? And because of that, they do not even think about exiting because they haven't gone through that hard work. And that is part of what I do. That is also what makes a business capital ready is there's a owner readiness to move on to their next chapter in life.
Mhm.
And I do that work with them too. Without that, again, the business is not transferable. Millions of dollars of capital is left on the table by each owner. Right now, we call it the silver tsunami. There's $10 trillion of privately held capital out in the marketplace right now that's locked up. So I think that's a travesty, and it's my mission, it's my purpose to help resolve that one client at a time.
I love this. So I have so many follow-up thoughts and questions I want to ask you, Paul, but we are obviously a bit limited by time, so I'm going to try to choose well. So first of all, there is this 70% of businesses then who end up never selling and what, just die out and like be forgotten in oblivion. Is that what's happening?
That's one. Yeah, sometimes they die out. Sometimes, like if you look at family businesses, which many of them are, they'll try to transfer it to the next generation. But the success rate of transferring a business to the next generation is only like 20%. And then to the third
Interesting.
generation, to the granddaughter or the grandson, it's only like 3%. So
Wow.
again, without the original leader, a lot is lost when they either pass away or they're disabled or they just retire because they haven't created um, systems. They haven't created infrastructure, right? What we like to call it the four intangible capitals, right? So going back to how is value created? Well, EBITDA, earnings before interest, tax, and depreciation, or net operating income for easy terms, that's the bottom line. That's your cash, right? That only represents 20% of your wealth. 80% of your wealth comes from your multiplier. And your multiplier is dependent upon four things, right? Number one is the human capital, right? Have you built a leadership team that can function without you? And are the seats on the bus, as Jim Collins would say, filled with A players or at least A potential players? Right. The second capital is structural capital, or all the processes and procedures and recipes and all the things that are important to the company. Are they documented and well known and available? Right? Are they have people been trained in them? Do you have a CRM? Do you have a management system? Enterprise management system. Those types of things. Then the third thing is customer capital. So what's your net promoter score? Do you have recurring revenue models? What percentage of your revenue is recurring? Do you have a lack of concentration? Do you have at least 20 customers at 5%, distributed by 5%? Or do you have one big customer? You want to have distributed customers all representing ideally 5% of the business. That takes risk out of the business. And do you have a supply chain that has redundancy and other suppliers in case there's a problem? So that's your third capital. And the fourth capital is your social capital. How well does everybody get along? Are they really, really motivated to win? And it's not about a single hero, it's about the team. So, you bring a lot of Pat Lencioni and the five dysfunctions of a team to the table. And what he talks about is like, you don't have a team unless they're all working together and you are able to have healthy conflict and talk things through. Those four capitals are looked at during due diligence by investors, whether they're strategy investors or private equity people. They look at those to determine whether or not this asset has any value. And the better you do at those four capitals, the less risk you have in the business. And the multiple is in direct opposite to the risk. So if I have low risk, I have a high multiple. If I have high risk, I have a low multiple. So one of the things I do, a lot of people get excited about strategy. 70% of a company's success is how we execute. And those four capitals help us execute really, really well. And that's what private equity firms, which again, there's a lot of 70 percenters out there, but most most business transfers are done by private equity people. They have no interest in running the business. They want to bring it on to into their portfolio, and they want to have someone who can run that business already. So it has to be a whole organization that can be purchased, and then it can be scaled. And that's what they're looking for. And if you don't know your core customer in that regard, as a seller of a company, then you're not going to earn the financial capital you deserve to do.
So again, a few things I want to follow up on here. There is this huge baby boomers wave, right, of businesses who is eventually going to be like either handed over to the next generation, which you just said. I didn't know that metric, by the way. 20% of succession actually happened successfully, and then 3% on the third generation, which is crazy. For me, that indicates not only the fact that people are not solution aware, they are also not even problem aware. How do you how do you market, Paul? How do you make sure that you educate? Because this is what it's going to be at the end of the day for you. It's not just, hey, I'm here, I can help you, organize a succession or sell your business. It's like, hey, did you know that your business is probably not worth anything? And if you want to return at some point, you might want to sell it. How do you market? How do you brand? How do you educate the space so that they eventually come to you and you get the right eyeballs?
Well, marketing is a challenge for the coaching world. We have to get the attention of the CEO who is busy in their office. And so when I first started this, I said to myself, okay, what is going to get a CEO owner, out of their chair, out of their office, and come to a presentation? So my marketing style has been public speaking. I speak to CEOs either in their individual CEO roundtables or as a group of CEO roundtables. One of the early in my career when I first started out, I created a program called Cashing In. And I thought that was a catchy title. And I actually paid money as a platinum sponsor for the Minnesota annual planning session of Vistage. And so I had 90 CEOs 2 years in a row in my room to hear me speak about the concept of cashing in. And again, the title was exciting. They were already going to be there, and so it was the best money I ever spent because I walked each year. I walked out with 6 new clients, and from there, the second way I market is I do a heck of a great job, and those CEOs, particularly who are in CEO roundtables, they start going in and start saying to their peer group how well things are going, and they say, "Well, what's changed?" And they say, "Well, my coach Paul." And they say, "Well, can you introduce me to your coach Paul?" So for me, it starts with speaking. The second thing, it starts with networking and introductions from referrals. Um, and then, one of the things that Vistage has is they have a vendor roundtable group. So I joined that, and that's where we exchange leads among each other as professional service folks. Some people are selling insurance, some people are selling accounting services, some people are selling sales and marketing services, and we would exchange leads from our clients, and so that's another way. So a lot of a lot of connections, a lot of coffees, a lot of breakfasts and lunches in the networking scape. Currently, I'm engaging with some professional help with my LinkedIn profile to try to use that technology in a greater way. And I'm also looking at a couple of experts in the area of social media to get the attention of business owners. So I've expanded my marketing, but my best approach is educating in person.
Hmm. What has worked the most for you? I like a lot the cashing in journey. That's a very good one. And I think lots of B2B coaches and consultants can learn from that. So is that the thing that worked the best for you? Would you say it's public speaking? I'm
Yes,
asking
that
this because go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, that is it is because if you can get the CEOs are already out of their office. They've already committed to a monthly CEO roundtable. They've already committed to an annual, get together. Or like one time, I was asked to speak to a fireplace company, that distribution company that they were like the second largest in the country, and they have all these people who run distributorships are aging out, right? And so they wanted me to come in and talk about business transition planning and exit strategy planning, and they actually paid me to come, which was nice. I was, did that in Memphis. So being able to speak where people are with my core customers already looking for education, that was great. So either being paid, if I can get paid for it, that's even better. But paying for that was some of the best money I ever spent as a coach and as a professional, growing my practice. So education is the best way to do it, but it's not easy. The idea of me trying to get into a YPO or a Vistage presentation, even in a single group, they have an education chair, and just like magazines, they're building out their time slots a year in advance, and they have different themes. So if you're not way ahead of the curve, and you want to start marketing, it's a long tail to get started, and it's not inexpensive, particularly if you're paying your way. So it's not easy, and it's not inexpensive, but it's the best method to be there when they're ready to hear something and be educated.
Mm. I mean, I like this last thoughts, because I think anything worthwhile today and in 2026 and forward, it's the thing that don't scale. It's the thing that actually require effort and time. Everybody's looking at automating everything with AI now. Everybody's an expert on LinkedIn. It's interesting that you're looking into this platform. Whilst I think the B2B coaches and consultants who are going to win in 2026 and after are the ones who are doing the unscalable efficiently, but still. It's still about the human connection. It's still about the authority building. It's still about being in front of or in the ears of your ideal clients and being like, hey, try this. Like, you will get benefits from it. And then they try it and they get benefits from it. And now they have their behavior reinforced by your advice, your own authority. And now when they're thinking about selling their business, they come to you. I think there is a lot to learn here for B2B coaches and consultants, because it takes time. I hear you, Paul. It takes effort. It takes money. But this is what brings business in. So at the end of the day, that's what we must focus on.
If I can jump in
What's
there,
the
Guillaume, if I could
please?
just add something to your last question. So that's why I like podcasts as well. I mean, this is being with you, and you're a fantastic interviewer. I really appreciate that. We're
Thank you.
we're educating your audience right now, right? So being
100%.
able to build a channel and build an audience around podcasting, and have the right customer listen to your content, that's a beautiful thing. They don't even have to get out of their chair. They can listen in from their office. So I think podcasting is a huge opportunity, and
Mhm.
I love getting invited, and I've actually thought about having my own at some point in time. I just
Interesting.
don't know how to do it yet. So I haven't taken that step.
I mean, it's like everything. You must focus your time and attention where you see the biggest benefits for sure. But one of the things you mentioned around conferences as well is that you need to plan way ahead. And indeed, the right play might be a podcast or anything. I do believe that anything can work. You just need to put a lot of focus and attention onto it to make sure that it actually brings the results that you want. But interesting that you thought about podcasts yourself, Paul. How do you so that's how you educate, that's how you get in the room, that's how you start conversations. Talk to us about the next steps. How do you get into a sales conversation? How do you get into a scope of work, a letter of engagement? How do you move from this education, problem, solution awareness into let's rock and roll, Paul?
Yeah, that's a great question. So again, doing the leap from, so market, kind of think about the spider in the web, right? The marketing that we're talking about is we're trying to attract attention. We're trying to have
Yeah.
a business owner raise their hand and say, wait, what? What you just said, if it's true, means I need to learn more. So again, there's no hard sell in the marketing, and there's no hard sell in the sales process, right? Uh, they first have to say, "Hey, I think that's something that I need to become more aware of." So, thinking about a concept called neuro-linguistic programming, where you have the conscious brain and the unconscious brain, right? We want to tap into that unconscious brain, and with some type of message that connects, and then they say, "Wait, what?" Right? And which means I need to find out more. which is educational, right? I'm saying something, they're learning about something that they have been thinking about or they haven't been thinking about. So that's the first step. Now I have their attention, they want to learn more. Um, that's a core customer at that. That's a really ripe uh, core customer. So the next step is continue with educational diagnostic, right? So my first conversation is I really want to get to know them personally. What are your goals? What are your motives? Right? Where are your frustrations? If you're in a family business or a partnership, is everything copacetic or are there some conflicts? And if they tell you that everything's copacetic, they're lying to you because all partnerships have conflict and all families have conflicts, right? Unless they've already had somebody in there that's created a design to keep the conflict from happening, right? So it's really about the conversation, and then I start asking questions about, well, um, what's your wealth gap personally? And they say, well, Paul, what's a wealth gap? And I simply say, how do you define financial independence? Let me help you. What would you need after taxes every year such that you didn't have to work anymore? What's that number? I had one client say to me, 800,000. Well, in the United States, we say, all the financial advisors out there say, we'll take 4% of your wealth portfolio after taxes, and that's what you need. So at $800,000, this person and his wife needed a $20 million wealth portfolio, right? To get $800,000 a year. So, okay, well, how much do you have now? Well, we've only saved $1.5 million. So they have a $18.5 million wealth gap. I said, oh, okay. So that's something that we can work on together. I can help you fill that wealth gap in a number of different ways. And they said, well, we want to be financially independent. I said, well, you are right now. They were a $25 million company with a 13% bottom line. They had been in business for 20 years. You could sell this company and fill that gap. The next question is how do you define significance in your life after you sell the company? And if you haven't answered that question, you're going to be miserable in your next life. And so I've been working with this client for 9 years now. They've already filled their wealth gap and they still want to run the company because it excites them. It's now a $125 million company. So the idea is you have to have that first conversation, explore their gaps, let them know that you can help them, right? And then get early wins. Help them with a number of different things and where you can demonstrate growth and moving in the right direction. Because um, once the engagement starts, it's a long journey. I've got clients that last from 3 years to 8 years, right? So it's starting with the first conversations. It's understanding what their pain points are, where the gaps are. It's about going forward with I use a diagnostic tool. It's called common sense scoring, and I can show them through a couple of different assessment tools, what their risk tolerance is right now and their multiplier and what it could be at best in class, and the difference in profit to the bottom line, and also the difference in wealth, which is millions and millions of dollars. And so with that awakening and that awareness, then the question is, it goes back to your question, well, why do I have to sell? I said, well, is it worth $10 million to you? And if it's not, you don't, right?
Yeah.
Or is it worth, in one case I'm working on right now, is it worth $100 million to you in the next 3 years? Right? And if it isn't, fine, no big deal. But can I buy your company as it is right now? I'll go ahead and grow it and make $100 million.
That's the best sales pitch. Hey, this could be $100 million, by the way. Do you want my help? Oh no, I'm fine. Cool. Let me buy your company because I'm gonna make it $100 million company. It's so funny. It makes me
That's a
think
real,
of one of the things.
Guillaume, that's a real story. That happened in June this year.
That's so. Did you buy the company?
No, he said, great, he hired me.
Finally,
So
he
I'm
moved
working with him
forward.
right now.
Love it. That's the really good offer. It makes me think a lot about one thing that my mentor says, and I wrote it down just to make sure I don't butcher it. It goes, many people want to sell their company because they can't, and once they can, most people don't want to sell their company. The story that you just told me about the $20 million to $120 million company, it's like, hey, it's not that bad now that I don't have to do everything on the day to day. And it's like I have a player leadership team and things are rock and rolling. I don't need to sell. Why would I? And
Exactly.
that's a very
They
compelling
can
argument.
take the role that they want and have, and now it's turned into fun, right? They take the role that they want to take. They got rid of all the stuff that they don't want. It's what we call a delegate and elevate. Get rid of the stuff you don't like to do and you don't love to do. Just work on the stuff you love to do.
Please sign me in. How do you? So that's going to be an interesting one. And I think that's the perfect segue from what you just said, Paul. Is how do you retain? The question. The reason I'm asking this question is when I was a consultant myself, one of the things that the partner who taught me everything told me was that there were two type of consultants, and B2B coaches. I'm going to assume is similar. There are the hunters and the farmers. And he was like, I'm a hunter. I love the fresh blood, the smell of fresh blood in the morning. I love to go after new business. That's my job. And he was like, but the partners making the most money, the ones growing the fastest, are the farmers. The ones who are able to take an initial engagement, over deliver, and transform it into a multi-layered, multi-year project involving other teams from the firm. Like those are the ones who do the best. And so what I'd be very interested in hearing you talk about is how do you retain? Because once you've reached that goal and eventually the company sells, how do you keep on working with that client? Or do you end up in a situation like that 20 to 120 million dollars company where it's just like, hey, let's keep on growing it because I'm having fun now. How do you do that?
Sure. So it's about starting with opening up their eyes and helping them see a different life in a different business and asking them if they want to go on that journey, right? And sometimes it's like, hey, there's a huge opportunity here if you want me to help you be your guide, right? So using climbing Mount Everest as a metaphor, right? I'm the Sherpa. I do it every day. I live on the mountain. I'm part of the mountain, right? The people who are great mountain climbers still come and hire me, even though they're great mountain climbers, right? Because I'm going to get them up and back alive, right? And so, because I've worn that path multiple times, and so they now have confidence in me, and they like me because I am listening to them, I care about them, I understand their pain points because they trust me. So I'm talking about the farmer right now, right? I build relationships, and we work on it together, and I'm their guide, and I'm part of their team, and so we keep on looking at what's the next stage in the mountain climb and what do you need to get there. And then the other thing is I'm a resource to them. So one of the things I pride myself in is I'm out in the marketplace networking with the other consultants and coaches who are A players. And if let's for example say they're stuck operationally, right? I'm going to say, well, I know this guy Bob, who's an expert in theory of constraint management and lean manufacturing. He can come in and help you. And I did that with my first client and we took a $30 million company to $180 million in 18 months because Bob helped them refine scrap metals 400% faster without adding any labor costs, right? So it wasn't, I found the problem, I helped understand the problem. I brought in the consultant who was able to use his expertise and change their operation. The second thing we did was we brought in a sales guy, right? This guy Tuck, who brought in a whole sales process to go out and find more scrap gold, right? Through a sales and marketing process. So there's always a gap, right? Once you fix the constraint here, there's a constraint in the marketplace or someplace else. I pride myself in having those A players that I can bring in as part of the team to solve those problems. So my job is to identify the traps and the problems and then bring some other resources into the table. So I'm constantly looking with my client as their guide to keep them healthy, safe, growing, and then bring in other experts to help them overcome things that I don't want to do. And even if I do know how to do them, I don't want to change my perspective in their mind of who I am. So, right, if I'm great at closing the books, I'm not going to close the books for them. That's not my job anymore, right? Because the perspective of who I am at that point in time becomes less. I'm working with them and their family at a high level. of planning and engagement and solving problems, and I want to maintain that level. So it's about, again, the unconscious mind. Who are they hiring, and what are I am their guide, and it's going to be a long journey. And so that's the first perspective. And then as we look at the journey, you've probably heard of, the great game of business or EOS or scaling up or three hag way, all these operating systems that break things down into, annual and quarter and monthly and weekly meetings, right? So I teach them all those things, how to do a cadence of daily stand-ups, weekly calls, monthly half days, quarterly planning, and we do all that, and I come in and I facilitate most of those for them. So I'm always working with them, helping them solve the biggest problems and moving forward. That creates adhesiveness, right? Stickiness.
Paul Cronin, ladies and gentlemen. Paul, if people want to find out more about you, see what you do, see how they could optimize their business so they can actually sell it or capitalize it, where should they go?
So Paul.Cronin at Cornerstone3.com is my email and website. I'm also on LinkedIn at Paul Cronin. And if you need a middle initial, it's Paul Anthony or Paul A. Cronin, because there's a Paul Cronin that's not me, who's out there doing some similar work in New England. But he's Paul F. Cronin. So look for Paul A. Cronin. And if you want to call me direct, my number is 651-468-8412. You can DM me.
I always admire the boldness of people giving their phone number on the podcast, but hey, it is said now. Paul, we'll put all the links in the description. For what I'm concerned, you've gained at least one LinkedIn connection out of this. Me, I just added you on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for coming on Consulting Leaders.
Thank you very much, Guillaume. I really appreciate meeting you and the opportunity to speak to you and your audience. So I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Leaders Podcast. We hope you learned valuable lessons on how to grow your practice and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time.